Picture this: a sea of golden sand, waves of dunes rolling under a scorching sun. It's hard to believe this was once a land of emerald forests, glistening lakes, and winding rivers. But beneath the Sahara's harsh surface lies a forgotten world, a time when this desert was a thriving paradise. Thousands of years ago, the Sahara wasn't just green, it was home to ancient civilizations, their stories now buried under layers of sand and time. Today, we're going on an expedition to uncover these lost worlds, to walk in the footsteps of people who thrived here long before the desert claimed the land. What if I told you the Sahara was once so lush that hippos swam in its rivers and elephants roamed its grasslands? This wasn't some mythical Eden, it was real, and the proof is etched into the earth itself. Rock paintings hidden in remote caves show giraffes, crocodiles, and hunters with bows, silent witnesses to a life we can barely imagine. How did this vibrant ecosystem vanish? What happened to the people who called it home? These aren't just questions for scientists, they're mysteries that connect us to our shared human past, to the resilience of civilizations that adapted or disappeared as their world changed around them. This is more than a story about climate shifts or ancient ruins. It's about rediscovering the ingenuity of those who came before us, the communities that flourished where survival seems impossible today. We'll explore the tools modern researchers use to peel back the layers of time, satellites that reveal hidden riverbeds, soil samples that whisper of ancient rains, and artifacts that tell tales of trade and tradition. By the end of this journey, you'll see the Sahara not as a barren wasteland, but as a living archive, a place where every grain of sand holds a secret waiting to be uncovered. So let's dive in, because the desert has stories to tell, and they're more incredible than you might think. The Sahara we know today, a vast, sun-baked expanse of sand, was once a land teeming with life. Imagine standing where dunes now stretch endlessly, but instead of barren silence, you hear the rustle of grasslands, the splash of water, the calls of animals long vanished from this place. This was the African Humid Period, a time between roughly 11,000 and 5,000 years ago, when the Sahara was a mosaic of lakes, rivers, and forests. What caused such a dramatic transformation? The answer lies in the slow dance of our planet. Earth's orbit shifted slightly, tilting just enough to pull monsoon rains farther north, drenching the Sahara with regular downpours. These rains didn't just dampen the soil, they sparked an explosion of life. Evidence of this lost world is scattered across the desert, waiting to be deciphered. In the Tassili Ennaja Plateau of Algeria, ancient artists left breathtaking murals on cave walls, images of crocodiles basking in rivers, herds of buffalo grazing, even humans swimming alongside hippos. These aren't fantasies, they're snapshots of daily life. Meanwhile, buried layers of pollen tell their own story. Scientists drilling into dry lake beds have found traces of plants that couldn't survive here today: grasses, acacias, even ferns that thrived in the humid air. And then there are the fossils, bones of elephants, antelopes, and fish, all silent witnesses to an ecosystem that vanished beneath the sands. But this wasn't just a paradise for wildlife. Humans flourished here too. Nomadic hunters followed migrating herds, while others settled near lake shores, building communities that traded goods across the green expanse. Archaeologists have found stone tools, pottery, even remnants of early agriculture, proof that people didn't just survive here, they prospered. Then, gradually, the rains began to fade. As Earth's orbit shifted again, the monsoons retreated south, and the Sahara responded in a way that would feel eerily familiar today. Lakes shrank, rivers dried, and the land began to bake under the relentless sun. The people who once thrived here faced a choice: adapt or leave. Some followed the retreating water south, their migrations etched into genetic and cultural traces still visible in modern populations. Others developed new ways to survive, laying the groundwork for civilizations that would rise along the Nile and beyond. What makes this ancient climate shift so gripping isn't just the scale of change, it's the parallels to our world now. The Sahara's transformation wasn't sudden. It unfolded over generations, giving people time to adjust, innovate, or move. But it's a stark reminder of how deeply human fortunes are tied to the environment. Today, as we grapple with our own era of climate shifts, the Sahara's story isn't just history, it's a lesson written in sand and stone. Hidden in the rocky outcrops and sheltered caves of the Sahara, time has preserved a breathtaking gallery of human expression. These ancient canvases, some faded by millennia of wind and sun, others startlingly vivid, tell stories without words. At Tassili Enaja alone, over 15,000 individual artworks transform the stone into pages of a prehistoric diary. But what makes these images so extraordinary isn't just their age. It's the intimate glimpses they offer into a forgotten way of life, a herdsman guiding his cattle across lush pastures, women gathering wild grains in woven baskets, hunters armed with bows stalking antelope through dense vegetation. These aren't generic scenes, they pulse with specificity, capturing moments that feel both foreign and strangely familiar. Take the so-called round-head paintings, some of the oldest in the Sahara. Mysterious figures with circular heads and flowing garments seem to float across the rock, some towering over 6 feet tall. Are these spirits gods or ancestors? The truth may never be fully known, but their scale and placement suggest these images held deep ceremonial significance. Contrast this with later periods when artists began depicting detailed scenes of daily life, children playing near huts, potters shaping clay, even intimate moments between couples. The shift in style isn't just artistic evolution, it's a reflection of how human priorities changed as the environment transformed around them. Perhaps most striking are the animals that dominate many panels, creatures unimaginable in today's Sahara. Giraffes stretching their necks above treetops, elephants lumbering through wetlands, hippos submerged in rivers so plentiful they supported crocodiles. These weren't symbolic creatures, they were neighbors, resources, sometimes threats. In one remarkable tableau at Wadi Sura in Libya, tiny human figures swim alongside these massive hippos, their arms outstretched in what could be play, ritual, or even early attempts at domestication. The precision of these images proves they were drawn from life, not imagination. But the rock art does more than catalog species, it reveals sophisticated cultures. In the Ennedi Plateau of Chad, intricate carvings show cattle with distinctive horn shapes, some decorated with patterns that match modern tribal branding practices. This wasn't random doodling, it was record-keeping, personal expression, perhaps even early animal husbandry. Meanwhile, in Niger's Jodo Plateau, mysterious symbols resembling later writing systems appear beside human figures, hinting at communication methods we've yet to decipher. What's heartbreaking is realizing these vibrant scenes were painted during the Sahara's slow transformation from garden to desert. Later artworks show fewer animals, more weapons, figures that appear thinner, subtle clues of ecological stress. Yet even as their world changed, these artists persisted, adapting their subjects just as their communities adapted to survive. That resilience makes their work more than ancient graffiti. It's a testament to humanity's enduring need to create, to say, "We were here," even as the sands tried to erase them. Today, researchers use advanced techniques like 3D scanning and mineral analysis to study these artworks without damaging them, ensuring these voices from the past continue to speak across the ages. Beneath the Sahara's endless dunes, an invisible network of rivers once pulsed with life waterways that carved valleys through what's now pure desert. The greatest of these was the Tamanrasset, a colossal river system that rivaled the Nile, winding over 900 miles from the Atlas Mountains to the Atlantic. Satellite images reveal its ghostly outline like veins beneath parched skin, while radar technology uncovers ancient riverbeds buried under 60 feet of sand. These weren't trickling streams, they were roaring arteries of water wide enough to support hippos and crocodiles, their banks fringed with forests where leopards prowled. The Tamanrasset wasn't alone. Across the Sahara, similar rivers formed a sprawling hydrological network, the Erhaha in Algeria, the Sahabi in Libya, each supporting clusters of human settlements. Archaeologists find stone tools and pottery shards concentrated along these vanished banks, evidence of communities that fished, farmed, and traded along the waterways. In Mauritania's Dihar-Tichet region, circular stone foundations outline villages once positioned like beads on a string beside a long-lost river. These people weren't just surviving, they engineered sophisticated wells and grain storage systems, adapting to seasonal water fluctuations with remarkable foresight. What's astonishing is how abruptly this aquatic world vanished. Core samples from the Atlantic Ocean floor tell the story, layers of Saharan river sediment suddenly replaced by wind-blown sand around 5,000 years ago. As Earth's monsoons shifted, the rains feeding these rivers grew erratic, then ceased entirely. Within generations, the Tamanrasset shrank to isolated pools, then vanished completely. Satellite thermal imaging shows how its dry channels still funnel scarce groundwater today, creating hidden oases that Bedouins call wadis, ghosts of the river's ancient path. The human response to this crisis reveals our species' resilience. Some communities dug deeper wells, tapping fossil water reserves. Others, like the ancestors of the Fulani people, transformed into nomadic herders, following erratic rains with their cattle. Many migrated toward surviving water sources, their exodus preserved in genetic studies showing population spikes along the Niger and Nile rivers around this time. Trade routes that once flourished along Saharan rivers shifted to camel caravans crossing the dunes, a stark adaptation from boat to beast. This wasn't just climate change, it was a total reimagining of human geography, all triggered by the disappearance of waterways we're only now learning to map again. Modern technology lets us reconstruct these rivers in startling detail. The European Space Agency's Proba V satellite detects subtle vegetation changes revealing buried channels, while NASA's shuttle radar topography mission mapped elevation shifts indicating ancient watersheds. On the ground, geologists analyze rounded pebbles and freshwater snail fossils to trace river flow directions. Each discovery peels back another layer of the Sahara's secret hydrology, showing how civilizations rise and fall with the fate of the water that sustains them. As today's climate shifts, these lost rivers offer more than history, they're a mirror, reflecting our own fragile dependence on the planet's changing water systems. Deep in Libya's Fezzan region, where the desert now stretches unbroken, the ruins of a forgotten civilization whisper secrets of survival against impossible odds. The Garamantes weren't just enduring the Sahara, they were mastering it. While other cultures fled the spreading dryness, these ingenious people looked downward, unlocking the desert's hidden wealth. Their secret, the Fagara, an underground irrigation system so advanced it transformed barren land into fields of wheat, dates, and grapes. Picture this, thousands of gently sloping tunnels, some stretching over 3 miles, tapping into fossil water trapped beneath the rock since the Sahara's wetter days. Workers dug vertical shafts at regular intervals, creating what looked from above like a dotted line across the desert, a lifeline disguised as geometry. Jerma, their capital, wasn't some isolated outpost. It was a glittering hub where Berber merchants traded gold from sub-Saharan Africa for Roman glassware and olive oil. Caravans of camels, each carrying 300 pounds of salt, moved along routes the Garamantes controlled, turning the Sahara into a highway rather than a barrier. Their pottery styles borrowed Greek designs, their jewelry mixed Egyptian and local motifs, proof of a culture thriving at the crossroads of continents. Archaeologists have uncovered everything from intricate metalwork to a unique script still undeciphered, suggesting levels of sophistication we're only beginning to appreciate. What makes their story so gripping isn't just their success, it's their downfall. As groundwater levels dropped over centuries, maintaining the Fagara systems became increasingly difficult. Tunnels collapsed, springs dried, and the desert pushed back. Unlike sudden collapses from war or plague, the Garamantes' decline played out over generations, a slow unraveling recorded in abandoned tunnels and shrinking city walls. Some scholars believe they shifted to nomadic herding, their descendants possibly blending into today's Tuareg communities. Others point to evidence of violent raids as resources grew scarce, a warning etched in broken pottery and burned storehouses. Modern satellite imaging reveals the shocking scale of their ancient hydrology. Entire valleys once fed by their tunnels, now bone dry. Scientists drilling near old Garamantian sites find layers of pollen from crops that couldn't grow there today, sandwiched between deposits of wind-blown sand. Their story forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. What happens when even the most brilliant water management can't keep pace with environmental change? How do civilizations reinvent themselves when their core technology fails? The Garamantes didn't just live in the Sahara, they danced with it until the music finally stopped. Today, their ghostly Fagara tunnels mirror modern projects tapping the same fossil aquifers, a haunting reminder that history's lessons often flow underground, waiting to be rediscovered. Imagine holding a hippopotamus tooth in your palm, its surface worn smooth by millennia buried beneath the Sahara's sands. This isn't some museum artifact from distant wetlands. It was unearthed in the middle of modern-day Niger, where rainfall now measures less than 2 inches a year. Such fossils are time capsules, each one shattering our assumptions about what this landscape once was. Take the Gobero archaeological site, where scientists discovered not just animal remains, but an entire human burial ground dating back 7,000 years. Complete with skeletons curled in sleeping positions, surrounded by harpoons and bone jewelry. These people weren't desert nomads, they were lakeside dwellers who fished for giant Nile perch in waters that have long since evaporated. The real revelation comes when you examine these fossils under a microscope. Pollen grains preserved in ancient lake mud so small they'd blow away with a breath, tell a story of grasslands stretching to the horizon. Scientists analyzing sediment cores from Chad's dried-up Lake Megachad have identified pollen from over 40 different plant species, including ferns that demand near constant humidity. Even more astonishing are the fossilized dung beetles found in Mali, their preferred diet proving the presence of large grazing herds that simply couldn't survive in today's Sahara. These aren't isolated curiosities, they're interconnected clues painting a picture of an ecosystem as complex as the Serengeti. Aquatic fossils add another layer to this vanished world. In Egypt's remote Gilf Kebir Plateau, now one of the driest places on Earth, researchers have catalogued hundreds of fossilized fish vertebrae belonging to species that require permanent rivers. The same sites yield crocodile scutes, those armored plates from their backs, mixed with snail shells that only thrive in slow-moving water. Perhaps most poignant are the petrified reeds and water lily seeds found near Algeria's Tassili en Naja, delicate remnants of marshlands where prehistoric children might have played. What makes these discoveries so compelling is how they rewrite human history alongside environmental history. At Takakori Rock Shelter in Libya, archaeologists sifting through ancient garbage heaps found fish bones accounting for 90% of all animal remains early in the site's occupation, then watched the percentage plummet as layers revealed more goat and sheep bones over time. This isn't just a menu change, it's a real-time record of people adapting their diets as lakes turn to dust. Similarly, cave paintings in Chad's Enedi Massif show fish species that no longer exist in the region, their detailed anatomy suggesting the artists knew these creatures intimately, not just from stories. Modern technology lets us see beyond what's visibly preserved. Isotope analysis of fossil teeth reveals seasonal migration patterns, hippos moving between permanent water sources and seasonal ponds, humans following game herds across landscapes we'd now consider impassable. Meanwhile, 3D modeling of fossilized termite mounds shows they were built in shapes that only form under specific rainfall conditions, giving us precise measurements of ancient weather patterns. Each discovery peels back another layer, showing us a Sahara where warthogs rooted through dense shrubs and catfish thrived in rivers now buried under dunes. The lesson written in these bones and seeds isn't just about the past, it's a reminder that today's seemingly permanent landscapes are anything but. The Sahara's transformation from lush wilderness to barren desert wasn't some overnight catastrophe. It was a slow unraveling, a story written not in years but in centuries. Earth's slight wobble on its axis, known as orbital precession, tilted the balance of nature with devastating precision. As the planet's orientation shifted over thousands of years, the monsoons that once drenched North Africa began retreating southward, like a receding tide that never returned. Rainfall patterns grew erratic, then scarce. Lakes that had sustained generations shrank into salt flats, their shorelines creeping inward like a tightening noose. Rivers that carved valleys through the landscape dwindled to trickles, then vanished entirely, leaving behind serpentine scars in the earth. This wasn't just about water disappearing, it was a cascade of ecological collapse. As grasses and trees died off, the exposed soil lost its grip. Winds stripped away the fertile top layers, leaving behind sterile sand that reflected sunlight like a mirror. This albedo effect created a vicious cycle. Less vegetation meant more sunlight bounced back into the atmosphere, further reducing rainfall. Temperatures climbed, evaporation intensified, and the land grew even drier. What began as a subtle shift in weather patterns snowballed into an environmental overhaul, reshaping an entire continent's destiny. Human societies faced impossible choices. Along the shores of Lake Megachad, once Africa's largest freshwater basin, now a shadow of its former self, fishing villages found their nets empty. The Kifian culture, known for their elegant bone harpoons, either adapted or vanished as the waters retreated. Further north, pastoralists who relied on seasonal grasslands watched their herds starve, forcing migrations that echo in the DNA of modern populations. Archaeologists trace these desperate journeys through scattered artifacts, abandoned grindstones near dried-up springs, pottery styles that suddenly appear hundreds of miles south. Some communities, like the Garamantes, engineered miraculous survival strategies, tapping fossil water with underground tunnels. Others weren't so fortunate, their settlements buried under dunes, their stories erased by the very sands that preserved their tools. What makes the Sahara's story so relevant today is the mirror it holds up to our own climate challenges. While ancient desertification unfolded over millennia, modern warming accelerates at a pace unseen in human history. Yet the parallels are uncanny: shrinking water sources, shifting agricultural zones, populations on the move. Scientists studying sediment cores from vanished Saharan lakes find eerie similarities to contemporary climate models, particularly in how small temperature changes trigger disproportionate environmental effects. The Sahara teaches us that climate isn't just about weather. It's about the delicate web of life that weather sustains and how quickly that web can unravel. Perhaps the most sobering lesson lies in human adaptability. The societies that endured the Sahara's transformation weren't the ones clinging stubbornly to old ways. They were the innovators, the migrants, the collaborators. Rock art from this period shows hunters gradually trading spears for shepherd's crooks, reflecting a shift from foraging to herding. Genetic studies reveal how intermixing between migrating groups created resilient new cultures along the Sahel's edges. This adaptability came at a cost: abandoned homelands, lost knowledge, untold suffering, but it also birthed civilizations that would shape Africa's future. As we face our own era of climate upheaval, the Sahara whispers a dual truth: change is inevitable, but survival is a story we write together. Peering beneath the Sahara's surface no longer requires a shovel and guesswork. Today's archaeologists wield tools that feel ripped from science fiction. Ground-penetrating radar pulses energy into the sand, bouncing back signals that paint 3D maps of buried settlements invisible to the naked eye. In Mauritania's Adrar region, this technology recently exposed the outline of a sprawling Iron Age city beneath 60 feet of dunes, its streets and dwellings frozen in time like a ghostly blueprint. Meanwhile, from 500 miles above Earth, satellites equipped with synthetic aperture radar cut through cloud cover and darkness to detect micro-variations in terrain, revealing ancient riverbeds and trade routes erased by centuries of wind. The real game changer: LiDAR light detection and ranging technology that bathes the landscape in laser pulses from aircraft. In Sudan's Bayuda Desert, LiDAR stripped away the veil of sand to expose a network of medieval pyramids swallowed by the desert, their precise alignment suggesting sophisticated astronomical knowledge. But perhaps the most intimate glimpses come from isotopic analysis, where scientists decode the chemical fingerprints locked inside bones and teeth. A single skeleton from Niger's Gobero site revealed its owner's life story. Oxygen isotopes in their teeth showed they'd been born near the coast. Strontium ratios traced their migration inland as a teenager, and nitrogen levels in their ribs proved their last years were marked by drought-induced famine. These aren't just high-tech toys, they're solving archaeological puzzles that stumped generations. Take the mystery of the Garamantes collapse. Traditional digs suggested abrupt abandonment, but pollen analysis from sediment cores told a different tale. Layers of date palm and olive pollen gradually replaced by drought-resistant weeds, proving their decline took centuries of adaptation. Similarly, thermal imaging drones flying over Algeria's Tassili Ennaja plateau detected subsurface hearths invisible on the surface, rewriting theories about seasonal occupation patterns. Even humble snail shells play detective. Their growth rings, analyzed with microscopes, record wet and dry seasons like tiny climate diaries. What's revolutionary is how these tools reveal connections across vast distances. X-ray fluorescence scanners can trace a pottery shard found in Mali back to its exact clay source in the Atlas Mountains, mapping trade networks that span the pre-desert Sahara. In Chad's Enedi Plateau, aerial photogrammetry stitches thousands of overlapping photos into 3D models of rock art sites, allowing researchers to spot patterns invisible from the ground, like how certain animal species disappear from paintings as the climate dried. The most poignant discoveries often come from blending old and new methods. At Libya's Takakori rock shelter, archaeologists using standard brushes uncovered fish bones expected in a lakeside site. But DNA analysis revealed something shocking. These were Nile perch, proving the shelter's inhabitants traded across hundreds of miles of waterways that no longer exist. Similarly, while satellite imagery identifies potential dig sites, it's still the human touch that brings the past to life. Like the researcher who noticed a peculiar scatter of stones in Morocco that turned out to be a Neolithic livestock enclosure, its purpose confirmed by phosphate testing showing millennia-old animal urine concentrations. These technologies do more than satisfy curiosity. They're rewriting humanity's playbook for survival. As we face our own climate challenges, the Sahara's buried lessons become urgent. When isotopic analysis shows how ancient herders switched from cattle to drought-resistant goats, or when LiDAR reveals how communities built cisterns to capture fleeting rains, we're not just studying history, we're receiving a message in a bottle from civilizations that weathered the very storms we now face. The sand that tried to erase them has become their unlikely ally, preserving their wisdom until we develop the tools to listen. When the lakes vanished and the grasslands turned to dust, some cultures didn't just survive the Sahara's transformation, they mastered it. The Tuareg people, often called the Blue Men for their indigo-dyed robes, became the desert's new architects, turning what others saw as a wasteland into a navigable world. Their secret wasn't brute endurance, but an encyclopedic knowledge passed down through generations where to find hidden water pockets beneath seemingly barren rock, how to read star patterns for navigation, even which desert plants could store precious moisture in their roots. These weren't just survival skills, they were the accumulated wisdom of a people who remembered when the land was different. Their oral traditions hold echoes of the Green Sahara most textbooks overlook. Tuareg elders recite poems describing rivers that no longer exist, pastures where only dunes roll today. The Asabru ceremony, where camels are decorated with intricate saddles, may preserve motifs from ancient cattle herding rituals adapted to desert life. Even their legendary salt caravans, crossing stretches so harsh they're called the Land of Thirst, follow paths that likely began as trade routes between lakeside settlements millennia ago. What looks like aimless wandering to outsiders is actually a carefully preserved geography, a mental map of the Sahara's lost possibilities. The Tuareg's resilience goes beyond physical survival, its cultural continuity in the face of upheaval. Their Tifinagh script, still used today, descends from ancient Libyan writing found in rock art across the desert. The elaborate silver jewelry worn by women isn't just adornment. Its crescent moon motifs may symbolize a time when water, not sand, dominated the landscape. Most remarkably, their social structure, matrilineal inheritance in an otherwise patriarchal region, hints at deep-rooted traditions possibly dating back to the Sahara's greener era, when women's roles as gatherers and water guardians held different power. Modern technology reveals how precisely these nomadic cultures adapted. Satellite tracking of Tuareg migration routes shows they instinctively avoid areas where underground radar detects dried riverbeds, places their ancestors may have known as fertile valleys. Genetic studies trace their DNA to both ancient Saharan populations and later Arab traders, proving how fluidly they absorbed newcomers while maintaining core traditions. Even their famed camel caravans represent adaptation. Carbon dating shows camels only replaced cattle in the Sahara around 3,000 years ago as the desert claimed the land. What makes their story so vital isn't just historical, it's urgently contemporary. As modern development encroaches on traditional nomadic routes, we're not just losing a way of life, we're severing a living link to humanity's past. Tuareg guides working with archaeologists have helped locate dozens of undiscovered rock art sites using tribal memory of landscape features. Their knowledge of desert plants is now aiding scientists developing drought-resistant crops. In a world facing climate uncertainty, these custodians of ancient wisdom may hold keys to our collective future, proving that sometimes the best way forward is to remember what was almost forgotten. Zerzura, the name alone conjures visions of a paradise lost, a city of white-walled palaces and singing birds said to lie hidden somewhere in the Sahara's vast emptiness. Medieval Arab texts describe it in tantalizing fragments, speaking of lush gardens and treasures guarded by silent sentinels. For centuries, explorers have risked their lives chasing this mirage. From 19th century British soldiers to 20th century adventurers scanning the horizon for palm fronds that never appear. But Zerzura isn't just legend. Scattered across the desert from Libya's Merzuk Basin to Egypt's Gilf Kebir, archaeologists have uncovered the bones of real settlements that match its description: walled communities built around springs that dried up long ago. Take the recent discovery of a site in southwestern Egypt, where satellite imagery revealed the faint outline of circular structures beneath the sand. Excavations uncovered not grand palaces, but something more telling: a carefully planned village with communal grain silos, pottery shards etched with markings similar to later Berber scripts, and an intricate well system tapping into groundwater that's now unreachable. The most haunting find, date pits and fig seeds preserved in the dry air, proof that this was once a place where fruit trees thrived under the shade of palms. These aren't the glittering towers of myth, but they're something more precious, a snapshot of ordinary life in a Sahara that was vanishing around its inhabitants. The search for Zerzura has always been about more than treasure. It's a window into how cultures remember their own past. Tuareg oral traditions speak of a white city swallowed by dunes, possibly echoing ancestral memories of greener times. In the 1930s, Hungarian explorer Laszlo Almasi, the real-life inspiration for the English Patient, followed local guides to a canyon in the Libyan desert where he found Neolithic cave paintings beneath Arabic graffiti reading Zerzura. The paintings showed cattle and giraffes, creatures impossible in today's hyper-arid landscape. Almasi realized the fabled city wasn't just a place, it was a metaphor for the Sahara's lost fertility, a collective memory of when the desert was alive. Modern technology is finally separating fact from folklore. Ground-penetrating radar surveys in Algeria's Tademite Plateau have mapped the foundations of multiple settlements along what was once a river tributary. One site shows clear signs of organized urban planning: aligned stone buildings, a central plaza, and even what appears to be a marketplace with trade goods from across North Africa. The most compelling clue: a carved stone marker bearing a bird motif and symbols that resemble ancient Tifinagh script, suggesting the inhabitants may have been early Berber speakers who later transmitted their stories to the Tuareg. What's emerging isn't a single lost city, but a constellation of communities that rose and fell as the desert advanced. French archaeologists working in Niger's Jodo Plateau recently uncovered a cluster of fortified villages dating to the first millennium AD, their walls built from salt bricks, a desperate adaptation as timber grew scarce. In Mauritania's Tagant region, the ruins of Koum by Sale reveal a medieval trading hub that once connected the Sahara to the Mali Empire, abandoned when wells ran dry. Each discovery chips away at the idea of the desert as an empty wasteland, revealing instead a graveyard of civilizations that thrived against the odds. The real mystery isn't whether places like Zerzura existed, it's how many still lie undiscovered. With less than 5% of the Sahara systematically surveyed, every dune could hide another chapter of this story. Perhaps the greatest treasure isn't gold or artifacts, but the realization that humanity's relationship with this harsh landscape has always been one of reinvention. The cities beneath the sand aren't just ruins, they're waypoints in an epic of adaptation, reminding us that even the most barren places were once home to someone. Standing on the cracked clay of northeastern Nigeria today, it's almost impossible to visualize the shimmering expanse that once dominated this landscape. Lake Megachad wasn't just a body of water. It was an inland sea stretching further than modern-day Germany, its shores dotted with fishing villages that harvested tilapia and catfish weighing as much as a grown man. Satellite imagery reveals its ghostly outline like a watermark on the continent, while fossilized reed beds along its ancient perimeter tell of wetlands teeming with life. But what's truly staggering isn't just the lake's size, it's how abruptly it fluctuated. Core samples from its former basin show the water level could rise or fall by dozens of feet within decades, forcing entire communities to adapt or relocate with each generational shift. The ecological diversity this megawater supported would rival today's Amazon. Paleontologists working in Niger's Gobero site have uncovered crocodile skulls nearly 6 feet long alongside hippopotamus bones, species that required year-round water sources. Pollen preserved in lakebed sediments paints a picture of gallery forests flanking the shores, where acacia trees provided shade for herds of buffalo and antelope. Even the lake's chemistry held surprises. Mineral deposits indicate its waters were fresh, fed by rainfall and rivers rather than underground springs, making its eventual disappearance all the more dramatic. Human settlements clustered along these shores left behind more than artifacts, they left a blueprint for survival. At the site known as Adra Buz in northern Niger, archaeologists found grindstones stained with aquatic plant residues, suggesting people processed lake-grown grains much like modern rice cultivation. Nearby, harpoon tips carved from bone show sophisticated fishing techniques, while shell middens reveal diets rich in mollusks that couldn't survive in today's parched environment. The most poignant discoveries are the burial site skeletons laid to rest in fetal positions, many with ornamental beads made from ostrich eggshell, a material that would have been abundant in the surrounding savanna. When the lake began its irreversible retreat around 5,000 years ago, the effects rippled across ecosystems and societies. Fish species that once schooled in its depths either migrated south or went extinct, their absence recorded in later archaeological layers where fishing tools vanish from the record. As the waters receded, the exposed lakebed became a new frontier. Wind carved the soft sediments into the dunes of the modern erg of Bilma, while mineral deposits formed the salt pans that would later fuel trans-Saharan trade. The human response was both tragic and ingenious. Some groups followed the retreating waters south, their migration patterns etched into the distribution of pottery styles across West Africa. Others, like the Kainbu people near Lake Chad's shrunken remnant, developed the ingenious Diri system floating gardens made from reeds that allowed farming on the lake's seasonal floodplains. What makes these megalakes so revelatory is how they rewrite our understanding of climate resilience. Sediment cores from Lake Yoa in Chad contain microscopic algae that document the Sahara's transition from wet to dry in annual layers like tree rings for climate history. These show the change wasn't a steady decline, but a roller coaster of droughts and recoveries over centuries. Societies that survived were the ones who diversified, combining fishing with herding, or maintaining trade networks that could supply grain when local harvests failed. Today, as satellite altimeters track modern Lake Chad's alarming shrinkage, these ancient lessons feel urgently relevant. The Sahara's megalakes weren't just features on a prehistoric map, they were proving grounds for human ingenuity, where every drop of water shaped the course of civilizations. Long before the Sahara became the world's largest desert, its rolling grasslands and interconnected waterways served as a superhighway for early human expansion. Genetic studies trace a remarkable pattern branches of the human family tree that sprouted across Europe and Asia, all share roots in populations that moved through this now forbidding landscape. The evidence lies in mitochondrial DNA passed down through generations, revealing migration pulses that coincide precisely with the Sahara's humid periods. One pivotal migration around 50,000 years ago shows groups moving rapidly along river corridors that snaked northward, their path greased by abundant game and freshwater springs that have long since vanished. Artifacts scattered across the desert tell the same story. In the Libyan Fezzan, archaeologists have uncovered Atyrian spear points, distinctive tools with finely worked tangs for hafting, that match designs found later in the Levant. These weren't isolated hunters' lost weapons. They mark a trail of temporary campsites where groups paused during their northward trek. Even more telling are the grinding stones found in Algeria's Tassili region, their surfaces worn smooth from processing wild grains. Similar tools appear suddenly in the archaeological record of the Middle East around the same period, suggesting knowledge carried by migrants from Africa's green heartland. The Sahara's role as a bridge becomes clearest when we examine its ecological gifts to weary travelers. Fossilized pollen records show stands of fig and olive trees lining ancient waterways, providing ready calories for migrating bands. Animal bones from archaeological sites reveal a smorgasbord of options: hartebeest, gazelle, even hippos, that would have made hunting far easier than in the dense jungles of Central Africa or the harsh deserts of Arabia. Perhaps most crucially, the network of interconnected lakes and rivers allowed groups to move in stages, never venturing more than a few days' walk from fresh water. This wasn't just random wandering, it was a calculated expansion made possible by a landscape that no longer exists. Modern technology lets us reconstruct these journeys with startling precision. By analyzing oxygen isotopes in fossilized tooth enamel, scientists can trace an individual's lifetime movements, the water they drank as children versus the water they consumed before death. One remarkable specimen from Egypt's Karga oasis shows a man born near Lake Chad who died hundreds of miles north, his teeth recording a gradual journey following retreating rains. Similarly, computer models that simulate ancient hydrology reveal least-cost pathways, routes that would have required minimal energy expenditure based on terrain and resources. These models consistently show the Green Sahara offering multiple viable routes where today only impassable dunes stretch. What makes this discovery so profound is how it inverts our understanding of human geography. For millennia, the Sahara stood as an impenetrable barrier dividing Mediterranean Africa from the sub-Saharan world. But during these crucial windows of opportunity, it was the opposite, a welcoming crossroads where different human groups met, traded genes and ideas, then dispersed to populate continents. The same sands that later swallowed cities once cradled the infancy of global migration, proving that even the most permanent-seeming landscapes are just temporary stages in Earth's ever-changing theater. The decline of the Garamantes and other Saharan civilizations wasn't the result of a single catastrophe. It was a slow unraveling of interconnected systems, each failure amplifying the next. At first glance, their fate seems tied to water or the lack of it. As fossil aquifers drained, their ingenious Fagara tunnels delivered less water each year, forcing farmers to abandon outer fields and concentrate on shrinking oases. But this was just the visible symptom of a deeper crisis. Trade routes that once brought wealth from across the desert withered as other civilizations faced similar strains. Copper from the Atlas Mountains, glass from Roman workshops, even the salt that was the lifeblood of trans-Saharan commerce, all became scarcer, disrupting the delicate economic balance that sustained their cities. What's chilling is how these ancient struggles mirror modern vulnerabilities. Take the Garamantes' reliance on non-renewable groundwater, a strategy not so different from today's megacities pumping aquifers dry. Their tunnels tapped water deposited during the Sahara's wetter millennia, a finite resource they couldn't replenish. Modern satellite data shows similar overuse in places like California's Central Valley or India's Punjab region, where water tables are dropping at alarming rates. And just as shifting trade routes isolated the Garamantes, today's supply chain disruptions, whether from pandemics or geopolitical tensions, reveal how fragile our interconnected systems truly are. Yet the most profound lesson lies in societal resilience, or the lack of it. Excavations at Garamantes sites show layers of adaptation: early buildings constructed with plentiful timber, later ones using salvaged stone as trees vanished. But adaptation has limits. By the time they switched to mud brick construction, their cultural zenith had passed. Compare this to the Nabateans of Petra, who faced similar arid conditions but engineered intricate water catchment systems that sustained their city for centuries longer. The difference: diversification. The Nabateans controlled trade routes across multiple ecological zones, spreading risk when one region faltered. Modern climate models suggest we're approaching similar inflection points. Studies of Saharan dust cores reveal how small temperature shifts triggered feedback loops. Less vegetation led to more sunlight reflection, which further reduced rainfall. Today's Arctic permafrost thaw and Amazon deforestation risk similar cascades. The Garamantes couldn't have known about orbital cycles or albedo effects, but their artifacts tell a story of desperate innovation: systems lined with waterproof plaster. Crops switched from water-intensive wheat to drought-tolerant sorghum. These weren't failures of ingenuity, they were battles against planetary forces beyond any civilization's control. Perhaps the most haunting parallel is in societal fragmentation. As resources dwindled, Garamantes society stratified. Elite compounds grew more fortified, while outlying villages were abandoned. Sound familiar? From Cape Town's Day Zero water crisis to the wildfires displacing California's poorest residents, environmental stress still tears at social fabric. The difference is scale. Where the Garamantes collapse played out across a few oasis valleys, our interconnected world risks synchronous failures across continents. But this isn't just a doom-laden warning. The Sahara's lost civilizations also offer blueprints for resilience. In Chad's Kanem region, descendants of Saharan peoples still practice flood retreat farming, planting crops in seasonal wetlands just as their ancestors did. In Morocco, revived Qanat systems, direct descendants of the Fagara, are helping villages weather droughts. These aren't ancient relics, they're proven strategies being rediscovered in a warming world. The sands that buried the Garamantes didn't erase their wisdom. They preserved it, waiting for us to dig deeper. Beneath the Sahara's shifting sands lies a forgotten encyclopedia of survival, page after page, written not in ink, but in the practices of people who turned scarcity into an art form. The Tubu nomads of the Taibesti Mountains, for instance, mastered the science of dew harvesting long before modern engineers patented similar systems. They'd spread sheets of woven grass across depressions at night, collecting moisture that condensed in the cool desert air, a technique yielding up to 2 gallons of water per square yard each morning. Nearby, the Wadab herders developed a cattle breed with a unique genetic adaptation: the ability to go 3 days without water while producing milk richer in nutrients than most modern dairy cows. These weren't just random acts of desperation. They were meticulously refined survival strategies passed down through generations. The real genius of Saharan peoples lay in their ability to read landscapes invisible to outsiders. The Tuaregs' water memory system involved marking nearly imperceptible cracks in bedrock where seasonal rains pooled underground. By inserting hollow reeds into these fissures, they could siphon water even during droughts, a method so effective that modern hydrologists have mapped these ancient markers and found them astonishingly accurate. Similarly, Berber farmers in Morocco's Dra Valley cultivated hidden gardens, burying date palm roots deep beneath the sand to tap into subterranean moisture while planting drought-tolerant barley above ground. Their yields were lower than irrigated farms, but their crops never failed, even in years when neighboring fields turned to dust. Perhaps the most revolutionary innovation was the development of desert-adapted crops. Archaeobotanists working in Mauritania's Dihar-Tichet region have uncovered evidence of early millet cultivation dating back 4,000 years, a grain genetically selected for its ability to mature rapidly during brief rainy seasons. These ancient agronomists didn't just accept what nature provided. They actively shaped it, breeding varieties with deeper root systems and waxy leaves that minimized water loss. Modern genetic analysis of Saharan pearl millet reveals traces of this selective breeding, with drought-resistant traits that still outperform many laboratory-engineered strains today. What makes these traditions so valuable isn't their antiquity, it's their proven resilience. In Niger's Zinda province, farmers have revived the ancient zai technique, digging small pits to concentrate scarce rainfall around crop roots. Yields have increased threefold compared to conventional methods, transforming former wasteland into productive fields. Meanwhile, Moroccan engineers are updating the Garamantes Fagara system with solar-powered pumps, combining ancient water capture principles with modern energy efficiency. Even NASA has taken notice, studying Saharan pastoralists' migration patterns to develop algorithms for predicting climate-driven resource shifts. The urgency behind these rediscoveries couldn't be clearer. As aquifers drain and temperatures rise, regions from Arizona to Australia face challenges the Sahara's peoples already solved. Spanish farmers battling desertification now consult with Mauritanian elders about traditional soil moisture retention techniques. California water managers study the Cainboo's floating gardens as a model for managing shrinking reservoirs. This isn't nostalgia, it's practical wisdom forged in the crucible of environmental extremes. The Sahara's greatest lesson may be that survival isn't about conquering nature, but learning its rhythms so intimately that even in austerity, life finds a way. From orbit, the Sahara appears as a static sea of sand, but peer closer with the right technology, an entire lost world snap into focus. Satellite archaeology has cracked open the desert's secrets, revealing patterns invisible from the ground, faint circular outlines of ancient huts beneath Libyan dunes, geometric arrangements in Algeria that match traditional cattle enclosures, even the ghostly grid of streets in Mauritania where wind-blown silt filled in a city's bones. These aren't just dots on a map, they're the fingerprints of civilizations that adapted to the desert's fickle moods. The real breakthrough came when researchers realized abandoned river channels visible from space often align perfectly with clusters of these buried sites. In Sudan's Bayuda Desert, satellite thermal imaging exposed a sprawling network of settlements along a long-vanished tributary of the Nile, each one positioned where the river would have bent, creating natural harbors for fishing canoes. Meanwhile, near Chad's Enedi Plateau, synthetic aperture radar pierced through layers of sand to expose stone foundations arranged in concentric circles, matching oral traditions about seasonal camps used by early herders following the rains. What makes these discoveries revolutionary isn't just their scale, it's how they're demolishing old assumptions. Archaeologists once believed the Sahara's interior was too harsh for permanent communities, but satellite data paints a different picture. Hundreds of potential sites clustered around fossil springs, some with clear evidence of agriculture. In southern Algeria, the European Space Agency's Proba V satellite detected anomalous vegetation growth tracing the outline of a massive oval structure, possibly a livestock corral large enough to hold thousands of animals, suggesting organized pastoralism on an industrial scale. The technology's precision keeps revealing surprises. Multispectral imaging can distinguish between types of soil disturbance, helping identify where ancient builders dug clay for bricks versus where they piled stones for fortifications. In Egypt's western desert, this technique recently uncovered a sprawling Neolithic ceremonial complex near the Gilf Kebir, its alignment matching solstice sunrises during the Sahara's humid period. Even more astonishing, some satellite-detected sites predate the pyramids by millennia, like the mysterious stone circles in Niger's Tenor Desert, arranged in patterns that echo celestial constellations visible 12,000 years ago. But satellites don't work alone. Drones equipped with LiDAR now fly over promising sites, bouncing lasers off the ground to create millimeter-accurate 3D maps. In Morocco's Dra Valley, this combo revealed an entire Iron Age trading post buried under 8 feet of sediment, its layout showing distinct quarters for copper smelters, caravan handlers, and grain storage. The most poignant finds are often the smallest, like the satellite-discovered cemetery in Mali, where each grave was marked with a single upturned bowl, a tradition still practiced by local Dogon people today, preserving cultural threads across millennia. This isn't just about filling gaps on historical maps. Every new site recalibrates our understanding of how humans interact with changing environments. When satellites spot ancient field systems in places now too dry for a single shrub, or trace irrigation channels that once turned dunes into orchards, we're not just studying the past, we're receiving a masterclass in adaptation. The Sahara's buried cities aren't ruins, they're classrooms, and their lessons about resilience in the face of climate shifts have never been more urgent. Beneath the Sahara's scorching surface lies a hidden ocean not of sand, but of water trapped in ancient rock formations for millennia. The Nubian Sandstone Aquifer System, one of Earth's largest underground reservoirs, holds enough fossil water to cover the entire desert under 3 feet of liquid. This isn't just moisture seeping between rocks. It's a time capsule from the Sahara's green era, rainwater that fell 25,000 years ago, slowly percolating through layers of porous stone until it pooled in vast subterranean lakes. In places like Libya's Kafra Basin, drilling rigs strike water at 1,500 feet, releasing pressurized jets so powerful they can shoot 30 feet into the air, proof of the immense forces that locked this resource away during the planet's climatic heyday. Modern technology has turned these aquifers into lifelines for Saharan nations. Libya's Great Man-Made River Project, a 4,000-mile network of pipes, pumps this ancient water to coastal cities, transforming arid land into wheat fields and olive groves. Satellite gravity measurements reveal the staggering scale of these reserves. Some pockets span multiple countries, with Egypt's western desert holding an estimated 50,000 cubic miles of freshwater. But here's the catch: this water isn't being replenished. Unlike active aquifers that refill with seasonal rains, fossil water is a finite inheritance from wetter epochs. Current extraction rates in some regions exceed natural recharge by a factor of 100, meaning every drop pumped is a drop permanently lost. The ethical dilemma mirrors challenges faced by the Garamantes 2,000 years ago. Their Fagara tunnels, cutting edge for their time, ultimately drained fossil aquifers faster than nature could compensate. today's mega projects risk repeating that mistake on a continental scale. In Algeria's Tamanrasset region, wells that once flowed freely now require industrial drills to reach deeper, saltier layers. Meanwhile, shifting water tables near Egypt's Siwa oasis have caused century-old mud brick buildings to crumble as the ground beneath them dries and contracts. These aren't isolated incidents, they're early warnings of a system pushed beyond its limits. Yet alternatives exist that honor both past wisdom and modern needs. In Morocco's Drâa Valley, engineers have revived medieval Katara systems' underground channels similar to Fagara's, but paired them with solar-powered pumps and moisture sensors to maximize efficiency. Niger's Tuareg communities practice water banking, using seasonal floods to artificially recharge shallow aquifers in a modern twist on ancient flood retreat farming. Even Libya's megaproject has untapped potential. Satellite data shows targeted reinjection of treated wastewater could extend the Nubian aquifer's lifespan by centuries. The Sahara's hidden waters hold a paradox. They're both a lifeline and a lesson. As we tap these ancient reserves, we're not just drawing water, we're inheriting the same responsibility that shaped and sometimes shattered the civilizations before us. The difference this time, we have the tools to measure what's being lost, the historical perspective to recognize the patterns, and if we choose, the wisdom to write a different ending. Among the Tuareg nomads who crisscross the desert today, elders still sing of a time when the land was as green as a parrot's wing, where great rivers flowed where now only sand whispers. One haunting melody describes a place called Wadi al-Hay, at the Valley of Life, where antelope drank from clear pools beneath acacia trees. For generations, these songs were considered poetic fantasies until satellite imagery revealed the outlines of a vast prehistoric river system beneath that very region. The correlation is too precise to dismiss the song's description of a bend where the water embraced the Red Mountain, matches a geological formation now buried under 60 feet of dunes. Similar echoes resonate in the creation myths of the Kanuri people near Lake Chad. Their oral histories speak of a primordial sea that shrank over generations, forcing their ancestors to follow its retreating shores. Modern sediment cores from the lakebed confirm this narrative, showing water levels dropping in fits and starts over millennia. Even specific details align. The Kanuri describe a great flood that temporarily reversed the drying around 3,000 years ago, which matches a well-documented wet period in paleoclimate records. These aren't vague coincidences, they're living memories encoded in story and song. Perhaps the most striking example comes from the Tubu people of the Taibesti Mountains. Their legends tell of a crocodile god who abandoned the land when the rivers turned to dust. For years, archaeologists assumed this referred to Nile crocodiles from distant wetlands until fossilized crocodile bones were discovered in a dried Saharan riverbed just 40 miles from where the stories originated. The Tubu had preserved knowledge of species that vanished from their homeland 5,000 years earlier, a testament to oral tradition's astonishing longevity. These cultural memories often contain practical wisdom lost to modern science. The Songhai people's epic of Askia Mohammed includes detailed instructions for finding water in seemingly barren regions by observing specific bird species. Knowledge that hydrologists have since verified corresponds with underground aquifers. Similarly, Berber folktales warn against building permanent homes in wadis that dream of being rivers again, a poetic yet accurate description of flash flood zones that satellite data now confirms as ancient watercourses. What makes these traditions so vital isn't just their historical accuracy, it's their emotional truth. The Hausa people's Saharan laments, mournful songs about lost fertility, carry the weight of generations who witnessed their world transforming. When a Malian griot sings of the great drought that scattered his ancestors, you're hearing not just a story but the lived experience of climate refugees from 3,000 years ago. These aren't myths in the sense we usually mean. They're eyewitness accounts passed down through hundreds of generations, refined like diamonds under pressure until only the most essential truths remained. Modern technology is finally giving these voices the credence they deserve. Linguists using computational analysis have identified proto-words for hippopotamus and mangrove in languages spoken by Saharan peoples who haven't seen those species in their lands for millennia. Meanwhile, anthropologists working with Tuareg elders have used their descriptions of vanished landmarks to locate previously unknown archaeological sites. The desert's folklore is proving to be less a collection of fables than an oral atlas, mapping a world that science is only beginning to rediscover. This living archive challenges our assumptions about how history is preserved. Where Western tradition favors written records, Saharan cultures developed sophisticated methods of knowledge transmission, rhythmic poetry that encoded migration routes, songs that preserved ancestral water sources, even dance movements that mimic the flow of long-gone rivers. The precision is humbling. One study found that oral accounts of star positions from 2,000 years ago matched astronomical reconstructions with 98% accuracy. In a landscape where paper crumbles and stone erodes, these became the perfect vessels for carrying memory across the centuries. As climate change reshapes our world, these traditions offer more than history, they provide perspective. When a Mauritanian grandmother describes how her people adapted when the land changed, she's not recounting ancient history, she's offering a survival guide for the Anthropocene. The Sahara's cultural memory teaches us that environmental upheaval isn't new. What matters is how we choose to remember, adapt, and ultimately endure. The bones tell the story, not in words but in the silent language of absence. Deep in the Sahara's fossil beds, layers of sediment hold the remains of creatures that once thrived here. Hippopotamus molars worn smooth from grazing on aquatic plants, giraffe vertebrae adapted for reaching treetops that no longer exist. Even the delicate wing bones of fish eagles that soared over lakes now turn to dust. These aren't just relics, they're pages from a lost chapter in Earth's diary, documenting how the Sahara's drying ripped apart entire ecosystems. Take the African elephant, whose ancestors once roamed from the Mediterranean to the Niger River. As the desert advanced, their range contracted like a shrinking island. Herds forced southward in a generations-long retreat mirrored in the fossil record by younger elephant remains found only in sub-Saharan regions. The speed of this ecological unraveling shocks scientists studying ancient climate data. Core samples from Chad's dried-up Lake Yoa reveal a grim timeline. Sediment layers rich in fish scales and aquatic pollen abruptly give way to dust deposits within a span of just 200 years. This wasn't a gradual fade out, it was an ecological cliff edge. Species that had coexisted for millennia suddenly faced impossible choices. Crocodiles that basked on Sahara riverbanks found their habitats fragmenting into isolated oases, then vanishing entirely. Fossilized dung beetles, those unsung ecosystem engineers, show shifts in diet from large herbivore droppings to smaller antelope pellets as megafauna disappeared. Even plants couldn't escape the cascade. Pollen records show acacias and fig trees replaced by drought-resistant tamarisk in a botanical changing of the guard. Yet amidst the losses, evolution's relentless ingenuity shines through. The Barbary sheep clinging to the Atlas Mountains today are genetic survivors of a much larger population that once grazed Saharan grasslands. Their distinctive curved horns and water-efficient kidneys represent millennia of adaptation to increasing aridity. Similarly, the slender-horned gazelle, now critically endangered, carries DNA markers proving its ancestors weathered multiple climate shifts by evolving the ability to go days without drinking, extracting moisture from desert plants. These living time capsules challenge our assumptions about extinction, showing how some species rewrite their own survival playbooks when faced with environmental upheaval. Parallels to today's biodiversity crisis are impossible to ignore. Like the Saharan hippos stranded in shrinking wetlands, modern polar bears swim ever longer distances between melting Arctic ice floes. The fragmentation of the Sahara's grasslands mirrors the way Amazon deforestation isolates species in shrinking forest islands, but the past also offers glimmers of hope. Fossil evidence shows certain generalist species creatures like jackals and caracals not only survived the Sahara's transformation, but expanded their ranges by adapting to new niches. Their success hints at nature's resilience when given room to maneuver. What's most humbling is realizing these ancient migrations still echo today. The annual movement of wildebeest across the Serengeti may trace its roots to ancestral herds fleeing the encroaching desert thousands of years earlier. Even the distribution of Africa's great ape populations shows genetic bottlenecks corresponding to periods when the Sahara acted as a barrier, then a bridge, then a barrier again as climate oscillated. These patterns remind us that environmental change doesn't just alter landscapes, it shuffles the deck of life itself, dealing new hands to species quick enough to adapt. The lesson written in these bones and genes isn't one of passive victimhood, but dynamic response. As the Sahara dried, some species vanished, some transformed, and some embarked on epic journeys whose consequences still ripple through ecosystems today. In our era of climate uncertainty, their stories offer both warning and wisdom, proof that extinction is only one possible ending when the world changes, but never the only one. Every year, the Sahara exhales nearly 200 million tons of mineral dust into the sky, a swirling tempest of fine particles riding the wind across oceans and continents. This isn't just desert debris, it's Earth's largest natural fertilizer delivery system. When those dust clouds complete their 5,000-mile journey to the Amazon, they carry something astonishing: 22,000 tons of phosphorus annually, a vital nutrient that replaces what the rainforest loses through river runoff and decomposition. Picture this: a rainforest the size of the continental United States, its lushness partly sustained by the very desert that seems its ecological opposite. The mechanism is almost poetic. Saharan dust, rich in minerals scraped from ancient lakebeds and weathered mountain ranges, becomes the lifeblood of trees that generate half the Amazon's rainfall through transpiration. But the Sahara's reach extends far beyond nourishing rainforests. Those same dust plumes have a dramatic influence on Atlantic hurricanes. During peak dust storm seasons, the airborne particles absorb sunlight and heat the upper atmosphere, creating stable air layers that suppress hurricane formation by robbing storms of the warm, moist air they need to intensify. Satellite data reveals an inverse relationship between heavy Saharan dust years and Atlantic hurricane activity, a natural brake system on tropical cyclones that scientists are only beginning to fully understand. The irony is striking. The same desert whose dryness fuels catastrophic droughts in Africa also helps temper destructive storms thousands of miles away. These global connections didn't exist when the Sahara was green. Sediment cores from the Atlantic Ocean floor tell the story. Layers of Saharan dust increased dramatically around 5,000 years ago, coinciding with the region's desertification. As lakes vanished and vegetation died, winds began lifting exposed sediment into the atmosphere, initiating a planetary-scale feedback loop. Today, climate models use these ancient patterns to predict how modern land use changes, from deforestation to urban expansion, might similarly alter global systems. When researchers input data about the Sahara's past transformation, the simulations reveal cascading effects, shifts in Atlantic Ocean currents, changes in rainfall patterns as far away as India, even disruptions to marine ecosystems as iron-rich dust fertilizes phytoplankton blooms. The Sahara's dust isn't just a climate actor, it's a time capsule. Scientists analyzing its composition have found traces of ancient freshwater diatoms, microscopic algae that thrived in the green Sahara's lakes, now lofted into the sky from their long-buried remains. These particles carry DNA fragments and isotopic signatures that reveal details about the lost ecosystems they originated from, offering clues to past climate conditions. Modern dust storms occasionally drop red snow in the Alps or coat European cities in orange haze, but these events are mere whispers compared to the Sahara's peak output periods during glacial ages, when dust fluxes were 5 times higher than today. Understanding these dynamics is more than academic, it's critical for forecasting our climate future. As global temperatures rise, some models predict an even drier Sahara, potentially increasing dust emissions and further influencing Atlantic storms and Amazon fertility. Other simulations suggest expanded vegetation could stabilize the soil, reducing dust transport with cascading effects on ocean ecosystems and carbon sequestration. The Sahara reminds us that no ecosystem exists in isolation. Its dust connects continents, shapes weather, and even influences the air we breathe half a planet away. In Earth's intricate web of life, the desert's parched breath is a force as powerful as any ocean current or monsoon system. The Sahara has always been a siren call for those who dare to venture beyond the known, a vast, inhospitable canvas that somehow draws explorers like moths to flame. In the mid-19th century, German geographer Heinrich Barth embarked on what would become one of history's most grueling scientific expeditions, spending 5 years traversing the desert on camelback. Armed with little more than a notebook and relentless curiosity, he meticulously documented crumbling citadels and transcribed oral histories from Tuareg nomads, preserving knowledge that might otherwise have vanished with the shifting sands. His journals, filled with sketches of Garamantes ruins and accounts of forgotten trade routes, became the foundation for modern Saharan archaeology, even as malaria and bandits nearly claimed his life on multiple occasions. Barth wasn't alone in his obsession. French soldier-turned-explorer Henry Duverrier immersed himself with the Tuareg in the 1860s, earning their trust so completely that they shared guarded secrets of desert navigation and hidden oases. His maps, though initially dismissed as fantastical, later proved eerily accurate when satellite imagery revealed the buried river channels they described. These weren't thrill seekers, they were bridge builders between worlds, men who understood that the Sahara's emptiness was an illusion masking layers of human history. Their handwritten notes often contained clues that only made sense centuries later, like Barth's offhand mention of strange stones arranged in circles near Niger's Aya Mountains, now recognized as Neolithic calendar sites predating Stonehenge. What's astonishing is how their legacy intertwines with today's technology. Modern archaeologists routinely cross-reference Barth's 19th century sketches with multispectral satellite images, discovering that his crude drawings of insignificant mounds often align perfectly with subsurface ruins detected by radar. In 2018, researchers used Duverrier's descriptions of Libyan cave paintings to locate a previously unknown rock art gallery using drones equipped with thermal sensors, the faint heat signatures of pigment on stone invisible to the naked eye. These explorers' greatest gift wasn't just what they recorded, but where they pointed future generations to look, The tools have changed, but the Sahara's allure remains. 21st century archaeologists swap camel caravans for Toyotas fitted with ground-penetrating radar, yet still face the same brutal challenges: sandstorms that erase GPS signals, temperatures that fry electronics, and the ever-present gamble of digging where water might have been 5,000 years ago. Teams like the British Cave Research Association employ laser scanners to map subterranean aquifers that ancient peoples tapped, while bioarchaeologists extract DNA from millennia-old dental plaque to reconstruct Saharan diets. Each technological leap peels back another layer, revealing how civilizations adapted or didn't as their world dried around them. Perhaps the most profound shift is in perspective. Where early explorers saw the Sahara as a blank space to be filled in, modern researchers understand it as a living archive. Nomadic tribes, once dismissed as timeless by Victorian scholars, are now recognized as active participants in this story, their oral histories guiding scientists to lost wells, their migration patterns echoing ancestral movements during earlier climate shifts. When a Tuareg elder points to a seemingly random dune and says, "There was a lake here," sediment cores often prove them right. The real discovery isn't just what lies beneath the sand, but how many ways there are to remember a landscape that never truly forgets. Climate models peering into Earth's future are turning to an unlikely oracle: the Sahara's ancient past. By analyzing sediment cores and fossilized pollen, scientists have reconstructed the desert's dramatic shifts between lush greenery and barren expanse over hundreds of thousands of years. These patterns reveal an astonishing rhythm. Approximately every 20,000 years, subtle wobbles in Earth's orbit pull monsoon rains northward, temporarily transforming the Sahara into a savanna. The last green phase peaked around 6,000 years ago, when hippos wallowed in lakes that have since evaporated into salt flats. What makes these cycles particularly gripping isn't just their regularity, but their speed. Geological records show the transitions between desert and grassland can occur within just a few centuries, sometimes mere decades at the tipping points. Now comes the provocative question: could human-induced climate change override these natural cycles? Some models suggest rising global temperatures might actually amplify monsoon patterns, potentially triggering an early regreening in parts of the Sahara. Satellite data already shows vegetation creeping back along the desert's southern edge, with rainfall increasing by up to 10% in the Sahel region since the 1980s. But before we envision a new African rainforest, there's a crucial catch: the same warming that might boost rainfall also increases evaporation rates, potentially canceling out any benefits. It's a climatic tug-of-war with high stakes, where the Sahara becomes a giant laboratory testing how natural and human forces interact. The controversy deepens when we examine historical precedents. During the Sahara's last major dry period around 4,000 years ago, the sudden collapse of the Akkadian Empire in Mesopotamia and Egypt's first intermediate period both coincided with the desert's expansion. These weren't isolated events. Tree ring data from North America and cave formations in Asia show global climate disruptions during the same era. Today's models warn similar domino effects could follow if current warming destabilizes the Sahara's delicate balance. Dust storms from the expanding desert already fertilize the Amazon and influence Atlantic hurricanes. Imagine how these systems might shift if rainfall patterns reorganize the world's largest hot desert. What makes the Sahara such a powerful warning isn't just its past transformations, but the speed at which they occurred. Lake sediment cores from Chad show the region's climate can flip from wet to dry faster than a human lifetime, a blink in geological terms. Modern cities and agricultural systems built for stable conditions could face catastrophic stress if similar rapid changes recur. The irony is palpable. Civilizations that arose by mastering predictable seasonal floods along the Nile and Niger might now face disruptions caused by the very deserts that once shaped their ancestors' fates. Yet within this uncertainty lies a glimmer of hope. The same models predicting potential upheaval also suggest targeted interventions, like large-scale solar farms in the Sahara, could actually stabilize regional climates by altering surface heat patterns. Ancient wisdom offers complementary solutions, reviving the Garamantes underground water systems with modern engineering, or applying Tuareg dew harvesting techniques to combat desertification. The Sahara's story has never been one of passive victimhood, but of adaptation and reinvention. As we stand at the crossroads of natural cycles and human influence, the desert's layered history reminds us that the future isn't predetermined, it's shaped by the lessons we choose to heed from the past. The Tadrat Akakis Mountains rise from the Libyan desert like a natural museum, their caves and cliffs adorned with prehistoric paintings that survived 12,000 years of sun and wind, only to face modern threats no ancient artist could have imagined. Looters armed with power tools carve out rock art panels to sell on the black market, leaving behind scars where once giraffes and dancers flowed across the stone. Wind erosion, accelerated by climate change, scours delicate pigments from their sandstone canvases, and in this politically unstable region, protecting these treasures often takes a backseat to more immediate crises. Yet every lost image isn't just a stolen artifact, it's a page ripped from humanity's shared story of resilience. The scale of the looting epidemic becomes chillingly clear at sites like Wadi Matkandash, where entire sections of Neolithic murals have been surgically removed. Satellite images show clusters of fresh pits around known archaeological zones, the calling cards of treasure hunters digging for pottery, jewelry, or anything saleable. Some stolen pieces resurface in European auction houses with falsified provenance papers, while others vanish into private collections, severing the connection between artifact and context that gives it meaning. But the damage isn't just from greed. Well-intentioned tourists pose for selfies with 1,000-year-old paintings, their breath and touch introducing moisture and bacteria that accelerate decay. Even the dust kicked up by passing military convoys, more frequent in conflict zones, coats ancient pigments, dulling colors preserved for millennia. Against these odds, local custodians are mounting creative defenses. In Algeria's Tassili Enaja, park rangers train with 3D scanners to create digital backups of vulnerable artworks, while community patrols drawn from Tuareg clans monitor remote sites using traditional tracking skills. The Enedi Plateau Conservation Project in Chad takes a different approach, hiring former looters as site guardians, their intimate knowledge of terrain now protecting what it once threatened. Technology plays a surprising role too. At the Libyan Department of Antiquities, researchers use machine learning to track looted items online, analyzing shadows and weathering patterns to identify stolen fragments. Political instability casts the longest shadow over these efforts. The 2011 Libyan civil war saw the destruction of Sufi shrines and Roman-era mausoleums by extremist groups, while ongoing conflicts divert funding and security from cultural preservation. Yet even here, glimmers of hope emerge. In Mauritania's Chinti, villagers rebuilt ancient manuscript libraries brick by brick after flash floods, salvaging medieval texts with techniques passed down through generations. The key, many conservators argue, is making preservation relevant to local communities, not as frozen relics, but as living heritage. When Niger's Wadob herders realized their migration routes mirrored those painted in cave art thousands of years earlier, they became fierce protectors of those sites. What's at stake transcends national borders or academic interests. These sites hold irreplaceable data on how societies adapted to environmental catastrophe, knowledge we desperately need today. The Garamantes' underground irrigation systems could inspire water-scarce regions. Rock art depictions of vanished wildlife help biologists track species migration under climate pressure. Even the graffiti left by 19th-century explorers provides baseline data on groundwater levels now crucial for climate modeling. The Sahara's ruins aren't just about the past, they're a survival toolkit for the future, if we can keep them from blowing away on the desert wind. The Sahara's golden dunes and endless horizons have long served as a cinematic playground, framing epic tales from the English patient's wartime romance to Star Wars' desert planet Tatooine. But these sweeping shots of emptiness tell a dangerous lie, that this landscape was always barren, always uninhabited, always waiting for outsiders to project their stories onto its sands. The truth hides in plain sight, the very locations Hollywood uses as shorthand for isolation: Morocco's Erg Chebi Dunes, Tunisia's salt flats of Chott El Djerid are dotted with archaeological sites proving humans not only survived here but thrived. When Raiders of the Lost Ark depicted Tanis as a lost city buried by time, it borrowed from real Saharan history, just without acknowledging the thriving trade hubs and farming communities that once made this desert pulse with life. Dig beneath the surface of these fictional portrayals and you'll find a troubling pattern. From the mummy's ancient curses to Sahara's treasure hunting cliches, the desert often becomes a metaphor for death or greed, its indigenous people reduced to exotic set dressing. Even Dunes Arrakis, while groundbreaking in its world-building, echoes the colonialist trope of a harsh land needing outsiders to unlock its potential. What's missing? The voices of the Tuareg caravanners who still navigate by stars their ancestors painted on cave walls, or the Berber farmers whose irrigation techniques outlasted empires. These aren't bit players in someone else's adventure. They're the living heirs of civilizations that mastered this environment millennia before Hollywood cameras arrived. Yet glimmers of authenticity break through. The cult classic The Sheltering Sky captured the Sahara's psychological weight through Berber guides who served as silent witnesses to the protagonist's unraveling. More recently, documentaries like The Green Sahara have used CGI to resurrect the lost wetlands and bustling settlements that once defined the region. Even video games are stepping up. Assassin's Creed Origins Discovery Tour mode lets players explore Ptolemaic Egypt's desert oases with historically accurate reconstructions of Garamantes water systems. These exceptions prove a powerful point. When creators collaborate with historians and local communities, the Sahara transforms from a blank slate into a living archive. Reclaiming this narrative isn't just about accuracy, it's about justice. For every cinematic shot of an unchanging desert, there's a counterpoint written in the sand. The crumbling Roman forts of Libya's Wadi al-Hayat, their walls inscribed with graffiti from Garamantes traders. The medieval manuscripts of Timbuktu, preserving astronomical knowledge developed under Saharan skies. The rock art of Niger's Termit Massif, showing giraffes and cattle alongside complex hunting rituals. These aren't relics of a dead past, they're waypoints in an unbroken chain of innovation. When we reduce the Sahara to a backdrop, we erase the generations who turned its challenges into triumphs, the engineers, artists, and explorers who proved deserts aren't voids, but stages for humanity's most resilient performances. The next time you see the Sahara on screen, listen for the absences. Behind the hero's sunburned squint lies a deeper story of cities swallowed by dunes, of languages whispered in oasis markets, of children who once splashed in lakes where now only heat mirages shimmer. This land doesn't need Hollywood's myths to be extraordinary. Its real history puts every fictional adventure to shame. The ultimate plot twist: the Sahara's greatest treasure isn't hidden gold or alien artifacts, it's the proof that civilizations can flourish in the unlikeliest places, so long as we remember to look beyond the empty horizon. The Sahara's dramatic shift from lush grasslands to arid desert wasn't just a historical event, it's a cautionary tale written in sand and stone, one that speaks directly to the climate challenges we face today. Consider the Garamantes, who thrived for centuries by tapping fossil water with their ingenious underground tunnels, only to collapse when those reserves ran dry. Their story mirrors modern cities like Phoenix or Cape Town, where booming populations depend on dwindling aquifers. But here's the crucial difference: the Garamantes had no satellite data warning them of impending scarcity, no global climate models predicting rainfall shifts. We do. Their fate isn't inevitable, it's a choice we can still avoid by heeding their hard-won lessons. One of the most striking parallels lies in migration patterns. As the Sahara dried, entire civilizations were forced to move, not in orderly retreats, but in desperate surges that reshaped continents. Genetic studies trace the exodus of pastoralists from the drying Sahel into the Nile Valley, their arrival coinciding with the rise of ancient Egypt's agricultural boom. Today, climate-driven migration follows eerily similar paths. Farmers in Senegal's region, where drought has slashed crop yields, now follow ancestral Fulani herding routes southward, just as their predecessors did millennia ago. The difference this time: borders and nations complicate what was once a natural adaptation. Water management strategies from the Green Sahara offer even more immediate insights. The Garamantes Fagara system, essentially underground aqueducts that minimized evaporation, was revolutionary for its time. Modern engineers are now reviving this ancient wisdom with a high-tech twist. In Oman, solar-powered versions of these tunnels supply villages with sustainable water, while Moroccan farmers combine traditional Qattara channels with moisture sensors to optimize irrigation. These aren't nostalgic throwbacks, they're proven solutions refined over generations, perfectly suited for an era of water scarcity. Perhaps the most sobering lesson comes from the Sahara's ecological tipping points. Sediment cores from vanished lakes show the transition from grassland to desert wasn't gradual. It happened in sudden jumps when critical thresholds were crossed. Today, similar thresholds loom over the Amazon rainforest and Arctic permafrost. The Sahara teaches us that ecosystems don't decline linearly. They hold on until they can't, then collapse spectacularly. Yet within this warning lies hope. Just as small changes pushed the Sahara past its breaking point, targeted interventions today, like regreening projects in Niger that have revived 5 million acres of degraded land, can pull systems back from the brink. The greatest takeaway isn't about despair, it's about adaptability. The cultures that endured the Sahara's transformation were those that diversified. Nomadic herders who kept mixed flocks of drought-resistant goats and sheep outlasted cattle-dependent societies. Villages that combined fishing with foraging weathered dry spells better than specialized farmers. This flexibility echoes in modern strategies like Kenya's pastoralist communities, who now use smartphone apps to track weather patterns and rotate grazing lands. The Sahara's past screams a simple truth: rigidity fails, resilience bends. As we stand at our own climate crossroads, the desert's buried cities and forgotten rivers urge us to think differently. They remind us that civilization isn't about conquering nature, but dancing with its rhythms, knowing when to hold firm, when to yield, and most importantly, when to change course. The sands that buried empires didn't discriminate between the mighty and the meek. They swallowed all who failed to adapt, but they also preserved, in fragments and fossils, the blueprints for survival. Our challenge isn't to repeat history, but to rewrite it using the Sahara's hard-earned wisdom as our guide. The Sahara still holds more mysteries than answers. Less than 10% of its vast expanse has seen the careful sweep of an archaeologist's trowel. That means over 90% of this sprawling desert remains unexplored in any meaningful way, a blank space on the map teeming with potential. Just imagine what could lie beneath those shifting dunes, entire cities swallowed by time, cultures with no names in our history books, or even evidence of human settlements that predate anything we've discovered so far. Every grain of sand could be hiding a revelation, waiting for the right technology or the right moment to reveal itself. Recent advances make this more than just wishful thinking. Ground-penetrating radar, once limited to small-scale surveys, can now map entire buried river systems from the air. Artificial intelligence sorts through satellite imagery, flagging unnatural geometric patterns invisible to the human eye, rectangles that might be the outlines of forgotten temples, or circles that could mark ancient wells. In Mauritania, a machine learning algorithm recently identified over 1,000 potential archaeological sites in a single sweep, places where the Earth holds subtle clues of human activity. And then there's LiDAR, the laser mapping technology that peeled back the jungle canopy to reveal lost Mayan cities now being adapted to see through layers of loose Saharan sand. The possibilities are staggering. Some researchers speculate about undiscovered branches of early humans who may have adapted to the Sahara's green periods, leaving tools or bones that could rewrite the timeline of our species' spread. Others hunt for evidence of trade networks that might have connected the Mediterranean to sub-Saharan Africa long before the camel caravans of recorded history. There's even tantalizing, if controversial, radar data from Algeria's Tassili region suggesting massive, man-made structures buried deep beneath the desert structures that don't match any known civilization. What makes these potential discoveries so electrifying isn't just their academic value, it's their power to recontextualize everything we think we know. The Sahara wasn't always a barrier. For long stretches of prehistory, it was a bridge, a crossroads, a thriving hub. Every new find chips away at the outdated idea of Africa as a peripheral player in ancient global dynamics. A single untouched tomb or cache of artifacts could reveal artistic traditions, technologies, or even languages completely unknown to us. Think of the Rosetta Stone, which cracked open the world of Egyptian hieroglyphs. What if the Sahara holds a similar key, waiting to unlock another lost chapter? The real adventure lies in how much we don't yet realize we don't know. For every Garamantes or Tassili culture we've painstakingly reconstructed, there could be a dozen more whose names have vanished from memory. Local oral traditions often speak of the ones who came before, hinting at legacies erased by time. In Niger, Tuareg guides have led researchers to ruins their ancestors described in song sites that turned out to be real, but belonged to no civilization yet documented. This isn't just about filling museums or updating textbooks. The Sahara's undiscovered stories matter because they're part of humanity's shared heritage, proof of our species' relentless ingenuity in the face of environmental upheaval. As climate change reshapes our world, the lessons buried in the sand, how societies adapted to drought, how they managed scarce resources, how they survived when their world transformed, couldn't be more relevant. The next great Saharan discovery might not be a golden treasure or a royal tomb, but a farmer's diary etched in clay, detailing how they coaxed crops from drying soil. The desert guards its secrets well, but not forever. With each passing year, new tools and new perspectives bring us closer to uncovering what the sands have kept hidden. What we find won't just tell us about the past, it might just help us navigate the future. The story of the Sahara's transformation isn't just a chapter in Earth's history, it's a living parable about resilience and reinvention. Those crumbling ruins and fading rock paintings aren't relics of failure, they're monuments to societies that flourished against the odds, adapting to shifts we'd consider catastrophic today. Think about the Garamantes who turned underground water into an empire, or the nomadic herders who reimagined their entire way of life as the grasslands vanished. Their legacies whisper a powerful truth: civilizations don't end when environments change, they evolve. What makes their story so urgent now is how it reframes our own climate challenges. The Sahara didn't dry overnight. It offered generations of warning signs, from shrinking lakes to shifting animal migrations. The cultures that survived weren't the ones ignoring these signals, but those who read them and responded with creativity. Fast forward to today, and the parallels are impossible to miss. Rising temperatures, erratic weather, vanishing species. We're seeing our own version of those ancient warnings flash across satellite feeds and scientific reports. The difference: we have tools those societies couldn't imagine: global climate models, real-time data, the collective knowledge of centuries. Yet technology alone won't save us. The Sahara's deepest lesson lies in how its people wove adaptability into their cultural DNA. The rock art that evolved from hippos to cattle to camels tells that story visually, a chronicle of continuous reinvention. Modern solutions often lack this flexibility, clinging to rigid systems in a fluid world. But look closer, and hopeful exceptions emerge. Farmers in Niger are reviving ancient agroforestry techniques, doubling crop yields while restoring degraded land. Engineers in Morocco are merging solar power with medieval water capture systems, proving innovation doesn't always mean inventing from scratch. Perhaps most inspiring is how the Sahara's past reshapes our vision of the future. Those prehistoric artists painting giraffes on cave walls couldn't know their work would one day inspire climate-resilient strategies. Similarly, our actions today, whether conserving water, protecting ecosystems, or simply sharing knowledge, ripple across timelines we can't fully grasp. The desert's buried cities remind us that every society leaves footprints, but it's the choices behind those imprints that truly endure. So as the sands continue shifting both literally and metaphorically, we're left with a question far richer than mere survival. What legacy will we embed in the landscapes we call home? The Sahara's lost worlds challenge us to build not just for the next decade, but for the archaeologists and storytellers of the 30th century, who may sift through our layers with the same awe we reserve for the Garamantes. That's the real gift of this ancient mystery. It doesn't just show us where we've been, but who we might yet become. Drop your thoughts below. What echoes from the Green Sahara resonate most in our modern world?